critically for us, he made a commitment that the funding, the 70 million proposed for council housing funding, is going to be under the control of Cambridge City Council. So it isn't going to be, there isn't going to be any influence from the mayor about how that money is spent. And in terms of the Treasury rules, in terms of the how it's overseen, the only review will be at the end of it to decide whether the Treasury judges that we've used the money well. There isn't any specific number of units, but clearly, and I know Councillor Price shares this as others do in this chamber, if we've got 70 million, we will make that stretch as far as humanly possible. And interestingly, he also said that there could be the prospect of more money. So both on affordable housing for housing associations, of which there's 100 million in the pot, there will be a discussion about putting forward a bid to increase that, because the councils have already identified a larger sum. But there's also the prospect that if we get the council housing agreement by signing up to devolution, that there could be more in the second 5-year period.
Yeah, thank you. Can I also, was there a discussion at all about opportunities for the city deal related to devolution?
Well, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, there was an exchange with Heidi Allen and Daniel Zeichner. Antony Carpen mentioned that they both made comments suggesting that there should be a discussion with ministers. And before Heidi Allen came to speak to the last meeting of the City Deal Board, I emailed her suggesting that. So essentially what I did in a short discussion with Sajid Javid was to register that we wanted to have that meeting. So we do want to have that, but as we've discovered in devolution, and I accept that a lot of the time devolution was meetings of people behind closed doors, what we do know from all of those exciting meetings about devolution is that you really have to get the right civil servants and the right minister in the room. So there isn't a point unless the MPs and ourselves have got a clear case and we actually set up the right meeting. So we started that process.
Thank you, and I want to thank the councillor for bringing her question, and I also want to thank the Executive Council for Communities who has only delivered some information on this unfair which falls into his portfolio. I would certainly not say that the council encourages parking on our green spaces. The general rule is that parking for event goers is not allowed. We do recognise that support and delivery vehicles can be necessary for many events, but we ask providers to restrict vehicles to these purposes. And of course, with many fairgrounds, you also need to allocate space for accommodation and towing vehicles, which are associated with those people providing the rides. The councillor has highlighted an exception to this rule in this summer fair, with the long-standing agreement for a parking compound at the fair. The vast majority of the parking spaces are used by the traders themselves, but there has historically also been a small amount of visitor parking. This arrangement has been in place for many years, and I asked one of my team how many, and they said almost certainly since the post-war rise in the ownership of motor vehicles, so it really is a long-standing arrangement. The visitors' parking area at the fair partly allows for accessible parking. However, it is overwhelmingly used by people travelling from all over the county to the fair, especially on the Saturday, and this provides a key meeting point in its own right. In this way, it facilitates part of the event's unique character, offering a meeting point for people who traditionally come to Cambridge on that day from all over the country. Not permitting a car park on site could significantly and adversely change the nature of the event and undo some of the goodwill we are keen to nurture with the Showman's Guild and travelling community with regards to the event. And I hope this doesn't sound petty, but just for clarity, a report on the 2017 Midsummer Fair Plan was brought to Community Services on the 6th of October, and the parking arrangements were in that report, and I do note that this was passed unanimously by committee members, including Councillor Austin, in that report.
Councillor Austin, do you have a supplementary?
If I can just first of all, clarity, actually I didn't vote for that in the Community Services Committee, and I'm aware it was spoken about, but maybe we can check that, but it certainly didn't vote for it. I think the The issue is that we are at a very interesting point in time in considering transportation and cars within the city of Cambridge. And it seems extraordinary that on the one hand we're persuading people that there is a need to reduce car parking spaces, and anybody in fact who wants to move around the city might even be blocked from doing so. And then on the other hand, we're sitting in a meeting where we're actually agreeing that people can drive in and park on the side. I agree that Midsummer Fair is an excellent thing to go ahead, but I really can't see if we have an adequate transport system, which hopefully the city deal will eventually deliver, that people will be able to use that whether they're coming to Midsummer Fair or going to work or going to school. It just seems extraordinary that this should be considered separate from everything else. I suppose my concerns go wider, and one of the reasons they go wider is because of the damage that's been done to bike green spaces over the last couple of years. And in particular, Parks, Peak, Street Green and Midsummer Common have really suffered from the movement of traffic and transport.
So effectively there are 2 points I think here. First of all, you say that the Assembly and the local liaison forums are being ignored, and secondly, you say that we shouldn't take to the press, or I'm not sure why. So in terms of the, if we're talking about the last meeting of the board, for instance, in terms of the issues that are raised by the local liaison forums of the Assembly, there are at least 4 that the board then agreed to. First of all, we agreed to continue, Mr Mayor, to test out the on-road option, the other side of the A11. Secondly, significant changes were made to proposals for park and rides over there, in terms of a whole changing of the site so that it was not visible from the slope, and also that a further option was kept in. There was a commitment to a significant cycleway. I think they call it a cycling superhighway. I think it's not the kind of language that I use, but a top quality cycleway. And there was also a need to follow up, ensuring that any route linked up with the M11 and there was some form of interchange on that side. There were a number of other issues raised that I raised myself because the local liaison forum and the Assembly hadn't raised it. The comment that the board then contributed to the media a couple of days after was to explain our position, which over 3.5 hours we did a lot of listening and we did a lot of explaining.
Yeah, I received a lot of concerned emails and phone calls on this item because residents felt, especially that the description of them calling them despicable that you agreed to as the grand Tory Labour coalition on the City Deal board as completely inappropriate for residents that are getting engaged in their own communities. I think that kind of language is unbecoming of the leader of this council, and you're in the course of your justification article, which, by the way, did we pay for that article? Because it didn't really look like a lot of journalism. There weren't any comments after your statement. It was just a statement published. But you violated your own commitment that you made to this chamber. You said before you're taking a major decision on the City Deal board, you're going to consult the councillors, you're going to consult the members of this chamber, and you haven't done that. I think you have some explaining to do beyond the PR gag in the newspaper.
Well, I think we explained after the decision in that newspaper. I have never made a commitment to prior consultation of councillors in this chamber.
Correction, Mr. Mayor.
Well, if you can evidence it, I mean, most of these sessions are filmed. Please, by all means, dig out the evidence. But this is a statement that you've made in social media, and I don't. It doesn't tally with anything I've ever said in this chamber. So that's my view. We are looking at issues. We are listening to people. On the Milton Road, we similarly listened to the local liaison forum on the issues, and we responded to them. So we believe there are opportunities to get a whole number of aspects of this right. While you weren't at the meeting, Councillor Cantrell was at the last significant meeting, and we are demonstrating, including on the Newnham side of it, that we will listen.
Councillor Cantrell.
Question for the leader this week.
So, does he reflect the views of residents in the decisions the City Deal is taking? Well, to inform myself, I helped organise a meeting with about 65 residents in Newnham a few weeks before the last round. So I do make it my business to do that. I can't recall any direct communications from Newnham councillors to me direct, stating views about any aspect of the A428. But if there had been from either of the three councillors for Newnham, then I would obviously respond to them as well. But I listened to residents, and I specifically went out to Newnham to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's very important for this city that the elected members do listen. Direct communication with the leader, we've had a number of them. They're called questions to the City Deal Board. And as he's aware, I presented a question to the last City Deal Board last Thursday in relation to a very sensitive issue, which is the Westfields. There, Newnham residents, and I was also at the meeting where he was present with Newnham residents, but it was before the proposals came out. Unfortunately, it was 4 days or 5 days before the proposals came out, so residents weren't able to comment. We could only speculate. Unfortunately, I couldn't stay till the end of the meeting, but I did take the trouble to go through the video. And I must say, the comments I've had back from residents where, Councillor Herbert, you are our representative fighting for us, the city, on the City Deal Board. And when you said that basically it's links between the Westfields and Grange Road, these are residential streets. As the Newnham resident quite rightly pointed out, they are residential streets that people live on, just like Milton Road, just like Histon Road. And my question to you is, when will you stand up for the residents of Newnham, for the residents of this city, against your colleagues on the City Deal Board, and actually make sure we punch our weight against the Tories?
The way that Councillor Cantrell portrays this is this sort of conservative busway lovers trying to run a busway right the way through. In terms of making the choices from outside of the city. First of all, I've never heard any response from Newnham councillors about, well, how do we get buses in and out of the west of the city? Given that the local plan, Mr. Mayor, rightly defends the city against creeping proposals, inappropriate proposals for Newnham, it is vital that we have a good transport link. As I said in response to your question, I see it as my business of seeking a route, particularly this side of the M11, that links up West Cambridge and does not just carve a diagonal corridor across there. Conscious of some of the issues, and I made this comment to Councillor Gehring, I don't think the local liaison forum has looked hard enough at some of the issues on that side of the M11, and so I specifically raised them in discussion, and I allowed a couple of residents also to contribute to that. So yes, there are proposals that would see the route come for part of the bus numbers onto Grange Road, but we look at this sensitively, and we're clearly going to look at what the option is that both maximises the opportunity, given that the university has stated support for the busway going through West Cambridge, of connecting houses and jobs, and looks to minimise the impacts minimise the avoidable imposition of environmental impacts west of Newnham.
Councillor Gillespie. Thank you. Question 5, please.
I'd like to start by thanking the council for this question. Obviously there are a couple of parts to your question. In relation to the first part, in terms of residual waste from actual plastic water bottles, it is under 1% of the total that could be identified as related solely to that type of plastic. In terms of the recycling bins that we have, residential, it's about just over 6% of the total recycling volume weight, is plastic bottles associated with water bottles. We know it's not the easiest thing to disaggregate because obviously plastics are used for multiple things, but when this is done by the council, when it surveys what is the content of its vehicles in terms of the different actual household items, obviously it's a very expensive and onerous task, but when we do it, that's how we get that figure. We don't have figures for street centre spaces in terms of everyday litter bins, just because of the way that they're emptied, the way they're collected. In terms of do I think that introducing water fountains throughout Cambridge would equal a decrease in plastic recycling, in particular water bottle recycling, I have no doubt that any efforts like that you would see in comparable cities, in other cities across Europe, no doubt would have an effect either up in Australia where there were fountains everywhere, obviously a whole country, where no doubt it did have some effect on total numbers. What I would say is that any decision in terms of fountains is one to be made not by me as an executive council, it's not within my realm, but by residents, friends groups, colleagues and so forth, and obviously relevant board councillors. And in conjunction with that, if there was a groundswell support, there's capital in place in a period of current retrenchment, then I personally don't disagree.
Just supplementary? None? Councillor Big. Question 6.
Thank you, Councillor Bick. I had expected to be answering this question probably to Councillor Bajent, so I had intended to give a response to this meeting. So there have been a large number of responses on the proposals, and from what I've read and heard so far in responses to the consultation, one aspect in particular stands out, and that's the proposal for the package of 6 control points. And my view is it does have serious problems, given the evidence on the scale of its negative impacts on city businesses and residents, and I'm not convinced at this stage that it is viable. I've made my views known to other members of the board, but the nature of a board and a group of people making decisions is that it's a collective decision. So I clearly want to make the case for the city on a number of aspects of this congestion. And I do think the city has a special right to have a say because of the direct impacts. So I know that other board members have already been considering this, and they share the view that the proposed scheme does need a full review. So this will be part of the next stage once the city deal has completed the assessment of all 9,000 returned surveys and over 1,000 more detailed responses. And so we do want to do a proper analysis of that response and the issues that are raised before making decisions about what measures to recommend, what process to follow, what choices to bring to the public.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to welcome Councillor Herbert's graceful acceptance that the roadblock plan will not command support from the city and the surrounding area, and that it will not work. I would have preferred to hear it in his answer the words scrap, withdraw or drop, but I trust that he understands that if this is starting to be revamped in the same form, then based on what he's just said, he will be accused of great manipulation. I would like to recognise all the people, many of them who've been quite frightened by this proposal, who have articulated their concerns and put considerable time into making sure that they were heard by Councillor Herbert and others. The fact is that this proposal was always a poor one. It was a political decision which flew in the face of evidence and that had been collected in public, and it lacked appropriate supporting evidence from elsewhere in the world. Furthermore, it was subject to a process with the public, which underestimated what it takes to win support for them to do something which really touches fundamentally the way they conduct their daily lives. And in thanking Councillor Herbert for his first response, and in order to give the public confidence for the future, I wonder if he could give an assurance that the council will ensure the city deal will ensure a thorough review of how so much public effort and resource got put into the proposal that ended up going nowhere. And secondly, that these proposals will systematically address all residents and ask the big questions as well as the small ones, in the hope that we can take people with us next time on alternative proposals.
The City Deal package was a package of 8 measures. This was obviously an important element that was consulted on. I don't resile from the view that we need to have a demand management element within that package. So there was a significant amount of responses on some of those other elements, and there's a great virtue in those, as there is in actually reviewing some of the responses that have come in on how do you, by targeted measures, look at the city centre. The core scheme was a targeted measure to move traffic outwards, and clearly the core scheme had a particular set of ambitions and methods. There may not be route to look at the core scheme as a model, but there are clearly a range of options that can be looked at. And I think the only way that we can really look at them, Mr. Mayor, is after we've considered the 10,000 responses. So there will be a need to look at those, and just by jumping ahead at this stage too far would actually just demean the efforts and some of the issues that people have raised. And we do need to listen and then judge how we take it forward. And we do have some serious issues. We have appalling air quality in the city centre, which is far worse than further out. We have bus congestion, just buses stuck in congestion.
Councillor Bajan, question 7, Mayor. Thank you.
Well, I've given part of the answer before, but clearly there is a significant number of responses. The survey, I've had a look at some of the initial analysis of the survey, and there's a whole range of issues coming back on the survey. The timing is that there will be an interim report that could well be in November, but it depends partly on workload. Certainly the intention is to report on the survey and some of the issues that have arisen before not before any further work begins, but before there's a discussion about the work that follows.
Councillor Carpen.
Can I have a supplementary?
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Sorry, no, that's okay. I'd just like to ask the leader if he's proud to belong to a party that went out and consulted week after week in an unbiased fashion with the population of Cambridge, and that we went and spoke to people. Within that, I would like to talk about the two independents as well, who also spoke in an unbiased way and helped the proposal to be discussed by the public. And is he also proud that the public themselves have come forward and spoken to us in such a resounding way and with such an enormous return? Unlike perhaps a party that took a position and frightened people with some of their ideas, who toured Romsey, knocking on doors and getting people to sign a petition that said Mill Road was going to be shut from 7:30 till 5 o'clock, who issued leaflets saying Mill Road was going to be shut and stirred up a hornet's nest. You know, also is the leader proud to belong to a party that said right throughout the whole discussion that they would be listening. And indeed, the Labour Party did listen, and the leadership has made a decision.
We don't you listen on the law expense?
Well, if councillors want to take an example of someone who puts in a huge amount of effort, then look at Councillor Bajan, because the effort that he put into winning a pretty remarkable share of the vote as a police and crime commissioner was then translated into every Saturday and Sunday outside Mill Road Co-op. So
Wrong.
He wasn't doing it, he just stood there.
he just stood there. But no, he engaged a lot of people, and certainly there was a long dialogue. Some of the fears that have been whipped up, I think, have been excessive. But at the same time, I get the message. There are clearly issues in relation to businesses in terms of deliveries, and in relation to residents who have, as Councillor Bick said, they have their own choice of pattern of journeys, and clearly what needs to be looked at is how we can both address congestion but at the same time have a vibrant city. Thank you.
This topic is Councillor Carpen, so.
Question, please, Mr. Mayor.
Just slip on with the it's going to be a long one, sadly. That's true, it won't. Any acceptable package of proposals must reduce net air pollution, and that is the aim of the city goal, which will be achieved by delivering a plan for modal shift from cars to buses. Initial results from the feedback is that tackling air pollution is more widely publicly acceptable than tackling traffic congestion alone. Any reduction in traffic will reduce air pollution. The absolute relative changes in air pollution, part of the modelling impacts of all the options, it will feed into the decision making on the packaging of the package and the final measures. Whatever traffic management interventions are made, there are changes to air quality as a result of traffic flows moving around the city. City and county officers have already commissioned modelling work to look at the air quality impacts of a number of options for city centre traffic management, which may form part of the eventual city intervention. The aim is to ensure that any intervention improves air quality where it is currently unacceptable, and that any result worsening caused by displacement of traffic doesn't breach legal health-based standards. Modelling carried out to date does not reflect the shift of pollution from wealthy areas to less affluent areas in particular, nor is there any indication that there will be more areas exceeding current standards as a result of proposed options. What is indicated is the intervention will improve pollution levels in many areas that currently have poorest air quality. Intervention should always ensure that traffic growth is minimalised and reduce the impact of air pollution from the forecast growth in the future of the city. The City Council is taking an active role in commissioning and assessing the impacts of proposed options and making sure that the evidence produced is robust. We are also actively pursuing any opportunities to improve air quality which are presented by the city field interventions, for example, proposing emission standards for any vehicles, giving preferential treatment, access and proposed closure points if they were to go